Hello and welcome to the Enterprise Talk Conversation Series, a peer knowledge resource by the CXOs for the CXOs.
Hello, everyone. We're joined today by Manish Dasaur. Manish is Managing Director and North American Lead for AI and Analytics at Accenture. Manish also serves as a board member of the Centers for Digital Transformation at the University of California. Hi, Manish. Welcome to the show. We're very, very pleased to have you with us today.
Oh, thank you so much, Samir. I'm looking forward to speaking with you.
Absolutely. We definitely want to pick your brain a bit and understand a little bit more about data, AI, and analytics.
Sure.
So to kick it off, Manish, with data probably being the single most valuable commodity we have today, as well as the exponential pace that it is currently being generated. In your opinion, do you think what is the impact that it has on enterprises as well as individual operations? And also, do you think that industries are being able to leverage it correctly or are being able to get the most out of it?
Yeah, it's a great question, Samir. I want to thank you for starting off with it. I think you're absolutely right. I think the impact on data and on individuals is immense, right? If I think about the impact on the enterprise, data is creating a competitive advantage and an opportunity for organizations to reinvent themselves or leapfrog the competition, right? So if you think about organizations like Netflix, like Amazon, like Google, like Tesla, they're all organizations that are in different industries and they're leaders in each of their respective industries. But the one common thing that they have in common is data. All of those organizations prioritize the use of data and using it as a differentiating asset for them. And I think that is very much relevant in the market. It's also a cautionary tale, right? You can think a lot of organizations get left behind if they don't pivot fast enough to the use of that data. When I think about the impact on the individuals, I think buyers are much more informed and more savvy now. They're more intelligent consumers of what they kind of expect. They expect personalization from their services. They expect and really demand a fulfilling experience from their providers, right? And our buyers are getting much more smarter at that. And last point I guess I'll make here is, when I think about leaders in industries versus laggers in that industry, in my opinion, it's very clear. Leaders prioritize using data in each of their functions and laggers don't. And I think that is fundamentally the difference.
That being said, one very important thing that kind of comes up is the distinction between AI and analytics. People kind of look at it as separate entities. So it would be interesting to understand how does AI and analytics work together and how exactly does that drive value towards businesses?
Yeah, another great question. AI and analytics in my mind are very much joined, right? And they go together in my mind. Think about analytics as providing the information and artificial intelligence as providing the automation or the process automation that uses that information. So together, that's a fantastic combination, right? So if I think about examples like computer vision, for example, right, where we're flying drones over electricity poles, taking pictures of those poles and running those pictures through algorithms based on analytics and artificial intelligence to determine which electricity poles may need some preventative care, which are close to being damaged, which may fall over and destroy properties or cars or other kind of hazards. And we're able to use a combination of analytics and artificial intelligence to mitigate those things before they happen. Think about other examples like self-driving cars or even smart agriculture, where we're using analytics and artificial intelligence to determine how much irrigation, how much pollutants are in agriculture or crops, so we can maximize crop yields and really help with the hunger problem around the world. I think the advantages are limitless, and I always see artificial intelligence and analytics being very closely tied to each other.
So of course, a lot of organizations I don't think are utilizing it to its fullest effect. So how does an enterprise take advantage of this great relationship between analytics and AI? What are the functions that you believe are the best to be able to leverage this power, and how does that again drive value for the businesses, value for the consumer?
Yeah, Samir, when I speak with my clients about this is a question that's on their mind too, right? How do we get the best advantage of it? I would share a couple of key things with you. One would be democratize the power of data. And what I mean by that is, don't think about data as something that needs to exist within a core competency or within a certain group of users. Really think about the power of data and analytics everywhere and in every decision we make, right, as an organization. Every decision, every person, everywhere should feel the power of data and analytics, and the democratization of that power, I think, makes a smarter organization overall. I have a phrase I like to use. I call it, "In God we trust, everybody else bring data." And I think that's really important too, right? Because we can apply analytics now to contextual analytics, where we're looking kind of in the past to see what's happened, so it informs our decision making. We can look at predictive analytics, where we're kind of using the power of data to predict what may happen, and helps organizations kind of position themselves correctly. Organizations that do this well look to use the power of data both outwards and inwards, right? They look to use data to understand their competitive landscape, to understand how the market is moving, how the industry is moving, but they also use analytics to look inwards to understand which functions they can optimize, which functions they can take advantage of. So I really think that using analytics everywhere and in every decision is a key differentiator of really applying smart analytics to your business. And as far as which functions they apply to, I really can't think of a function that they wouldn't apply to, right? I kind of think about sales, marketing, supply chain, customer relations, all core functions that are significantly improved as clients impact it with more data and analytics informed thinking.
Exactly. A question here that kind of comes to mind when you're talking about that kind of data and that kind of data being processed is, number one, of course, the question of the veracity of the data that is coming in. So is all data good data? Are there things that somebody should look out for, that company should look out for, to say, okay, this is a source of clean data that we're trying to ingest? And also a follow-up question to my last one. When we are talking about having companies, having organizations go into AI, look at that as a differentiator for their businesses, what do you think is the path of least resistance for them to understand that power and then take that forward through their organizations?
So you had a couple questions there. Remind me of the first one.
The first question is, of course, data veracity. So with the amount of data being fed into organizations, is all data good data?
That's a great question. I wouldn't say all data is good data. And I also think data quality is really important, right? Even the most powerful analytic tools are as good as the quality of the information that you could feed those analytical models with. So I do think that's important. But what I also think is, don't let that trip you up. I'm always a fan of progress over perfection. So I don't think it's about making sure that your data is 100% clean or 100%, has the veracity that you expect. I think it's much more about, is it good enough to help me make a decision? And you can continue to improve it over time. But actually where I see a lot of clients trip up is they're trying to get it perfect before they make any progress. And I would actually argue progress over perfection is the goal, and learning as you go is part of the process, right? So I think that's okay.
And just coming back to the second part of that question, I know it was a lot to unpack, but when organizations are trying to embrace data and analytics, what is the path of least resistance to get them to understand that power and then drive it through their organizations?
Yeah, that's a great one. I would always recommend my clients to start with the business result that they're looking for in mind, right? And if they start with that, then I think the path of least resistance is getting the rest of our leadership team, the organization team, to really understand how this data, this investment, this analytics, whatever we're going to do is going to move that metric, is going to move the needle on the business result we're looking for. And then you really shift the conversation. We're not talking about an IT project. We're not talking about a technology project. We're talking about a program that's going to significantly impact the bottom line of an organization, right? And then you'll get, all your business teams and your technology teams and everyone else that you'll need to stack hands to work on it together. And that can sometimes help our clients eliminate the barrier of entry.
Absolutely makes sense. That being said, with the power of analytics and AI, and companies using them to overcome the challenges, what are the most common challenges that you have seen? Where do companies most often trip up? And how would you kind of suggest, number one, avoiding those happening in the first place? And if they do happen, what is the best way to overcome them?
Yeah, great. Well, first of all, let's start with the funding when we think about that answer, right? And the number one mistake I still think I see some executives make is they think about AI and analytics as a cost center. They think about, how much do I need to put into this cost center? And they're going to miss the point when you think about it like that. It's really not a cost center. Think about it as an innovation engine, right? So you should not be you should not be thinking about how do I reduce my investment in this space 10% year over year. That's the attitude of someone who's going to lose that competitive advantage in that market. What you want to be thinking about is how do I incrementally increase the value that I get from data and analytics and use that to drive innovation, reinvention, pivoting to new businesses as part of my enterprise. So shifting the thinking from a cost center to an innovation engine, I think is one key challenge that some organizations face, and certainly one that the ones that get it right see an explosive kind of return on that investment. The second one, I'd probably share, Samir, is analysis paralysis, right? We talked about progress over perfection. Another way to think about that is analysis paralysis. I see some clients who really want to get it all right. They spend a lot of time in the analysis phase, in the getting things set up phase. And by then they kind of miss the market, right? I think speed to market is an absolute important thing, just like cost is. So my suggestion to clients is always, follow the Silicon Valley model. Try it. Go build something, learn from what you built, make some adjustments, and then put out the next iteration and the next iteration. That's much better to kind of move in that way, as opposed to spending months and months to analysis up front. And maybe the last point I'd share with you on kind of the key challenges that I see is sometimes, I think I see a lack of a strong leader who's going to champion this initiative in the enterprise. And I think that's really important, right? You really need a C-suite level leader who believes in the power of analytics, who believes in the transformational ability that can provide an organization. And you need that leader to really disseminate and create that culture. And I think that's really important as well.
I think you kind of hit the nail on the head with the idea of progress over perfection and the idea of trying something and seeing the value that it can create and then taking that forward. And of course, the buy-in for the leadership is a big part of that entire process. Yeah. So overall, Manish, what would be your advice or mantra to business leaders that are looking, number one, to implement AI and analytics? And again, of course, the question of cost always there. So how do they mitigate the cost involved in implementing such a project?
Well, first of all, I would say, be value focused, not cost focused. So don't only think about how much do I need to invest, but also think about what's going to be the return on this investment, right? What can I expect to get out of the other side of the equation? And therefore having a value focus as opposed to a cost focus, I think is really important. Data shows, Samir, that, organizations that invest in analytics, they outperform their competitors in a bull market, and they recover faster than their competitors in a bear market, right? So the data shows that if you're investing in data and analytics, when the market is good, you're going to outperform your competitors. And when the market's not so good, you're going to recover better than your competitors. And both are exactly the position you want to be as an organization, right? So I would first and foremost kind of think about a value-focused lens, not a cost-focused lens. And if the question is really how do I mitigate cost, there's lots of different options to do that, right? There's open source technologies that can help you do that. There's the power of crowdsourcing and different differentiated workforces that can help you do that. So lots of different options there. And then the last thing I'd probably share there is it's a team sport, right? So don't think you've got to solve it alone. You don't have to figure out all the answers on your own. Successful organizations partner with other organizations. They create an ecosystem. They create a teamwork kind of environment, and they're able to leverage the skills and the core competencies of multiple enterprises and bring them together to get to a solution that's cost effective and fast to market.
So Manish, I would really like to thank you for taking the time today to speak to us. I think the points that you've raised are quite impactful, and I'm sure our audience will have gained a much better understanding on how to leverage AI and analytics and how to change the thinking from it being a cost center to an innovation center and actually driving value for businesses through data analytics and AI. I'd also like to thank our audience for joining us, and we definitely look forward to having you back on the next interview. Thank you so much, Manish.
Thank you so much, Samir. It was great talking to you and great to be with you again.
So much, and we definitely should do it again.
Thank you so much for being with us. Please do follow us on social media for regular updates and new content.